Hi, I'm Heather Lauer, and this is the HerdCon PopCast. So, joining me to discuss the Gilmore Girls is Hallie Knipp and Meghan Sexton-Harness. So,
Hello.
hello.
Hi, Heather.
Hi. So, thank you guys for joining me. In full disclosure, I am watching the Gilmore Girls for the first time right now. Not right now, but and I am in season 4. So a lot of what we're going to be discussing is going to be new to me. So I'm really pretty thrilled to find out my future. So moving along, let's start off with the most pressing question imaginable. Team Dean, Team Jess, Team Logan, Team Other?
I'll go ahead and answer. I am unequivocally, goodness, Team Jess all the way. I understand Team Logan and I see where they're coming from, but for me, it'll always be Jess. He is the man of my dreams.
I think for me, I think I actually am Team Logan. I love Jess. I do. Maybe I want Jess for myself when he's an adult. Um, but I just think Jess did too little too late. It was she had already met Logan, and like I really love who Logan is for her, that he gets her outside of her comfort box and gets her to do things that she wouldn't do while still keeping her in the lifestyle I guess now her parents have gotten her used to. She can take her pack I'm so sorry, backpacking trips to Europe anytime she wants. Um, but I could definitely see her being very happy with Jess. Um, they both love to read, and I don't really see Logan reading a lot. A lot of journalism, but not actually reading literature.
Oh,
Yeah, for sure.
okay.
But absolutely, I will never understand Team Dean.
Yeah, he's interesting. I really thought that he was super sweet at the beginning. And
Yeah, season
then
1, Dean, totally great. Well, not totally great, mostly great. But after season 1, it's not there for me.
yeah, when he blames her and gets mad at her over his marriage ending, I
Yeah,
just like, yes, she was in the wrong too, but he was taking zero responsibility.
honestly, like you're the one that cheated on your wife.
Yeah, you made those decisions. And yes, Rory made her decisions, but it's not all her fault.
No.
Exactly.
Oh, man, I've got a lot of fun stuff looking forward to me, and it's like the first 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think Rory kind of gets into a habit of being cheater or cheated with, as we'll see in the year in the life.
She's the person people cheat with.
Oh,
Inter-
man.
yeah. And in the year in the life, she does cheat on Paul or Peter or
True.
whatever his name is. Um,
Paul.
but I've recently seen people saying that they wish Rory had been with Marty. And as much as I love Marty, I just cannot see them going together.
I think I heard an interview at some point that alluded to the fact like they introduced Marty to be a love interest for Rory. Um, but for whatever reason, they just didn't ever make that happen. I can see it though.
Yeah. I think they both have like the same small town down to earth attitude, but I thought that played really, really well for their friendship.
Yeah, for sure. I think they're really good friends, and there just wasn't the chemistry that they needed.
I was just thinking the same thing, that they just do not have that romantic kind of love. They have more of a brother sister. He could lay on the couch and watch old movies with Lorelai and Rory.
Yeah, for sure. I think he would fit in, but it wouldn't be romantic in any way.
I mean, I don't even know. I think he's a little too normal for Stars Hollow.
Heck,
Yeah.
they introduced him naked. I mean, well, they introduced him in a Japanese lit class, but still, I mean, his first real high is him in a naked position basically, and even then, no sparks, no nothing.
The naked guy in
True.
the hall.
Yeah.
They do say he has a good butt.
That's true. And then I don't know. I got very upset what they did with Marty's character. I think they made him very nice guy. Now that you don't want to be with me, I don't want to be your friend. And then just the way he treats his girlfriend in later series, I could not imagine the original Marty acting like that.
Yeah, they really do him dirty. And Heather, you'll see what we were talking about in season 7.
Oh God.
Yeah. And they basically bring him in and then just drop him again as fast as they did in season 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, I'm gonna be saying this all of this. I'm gonna be like, oh my God, I have this to look forward to. I have this to look forward to. Oh God. Okay. So, can you smell the snow coming?
I personally can't. I do love like when it's a clear winter night and it's like brisk and you can kind of, I guess you can smell how cold it is, if that makes sense. But that's as close as I've ever gotten to smelling the snow.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you, Hallie. Because when I think of the smell of snow, I think of just that very cold smell. Or maybe the smell right after it snowed. Um, but yeah, I don't smell it days ahead of time the way Lorelai does. She must have
She's a
some kind of intuition. She just knows when it's going to snow. She is attached to it. But I will agree with her that snow is magical when it first falls and you get to stay home. It's not so magical when
absolutely.
you have to be out in it.
There it
No.
is.
Speaking of, one of my favorite episodes is when Rory does get snowed in and she has to teach Emily and Richard how to cook a frozen pizza. That episode just kills me every time.
And they're like dumbfounded by how good it is.
Yes. I think that it was a very good scene to show like how out of touch they are with just everyday regular people life.
Yeah, another scene I really enjoy that kind of does that is I think it's season 4, maybe season 5, where they meet up with Emily at the mall and take her to the food court.
Mhm.
And she's like, "What is this place?"
Emily, as much as she gets on my nerves and frustrates me, has some great lines and some great times. I do enjoy Emily, even though I don't know how I'd feel about her being my mother. I can understand where Lorelai comes from.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of Lorelai, who would you match Lorelai with? Who do you think she matched best with, and who would you match her with?
I think the obvious answer is Luke. I am 1000% Lorelai and Luke all the way.
I'm right there with you. I got so frustrated so many times during the series. I was like, can you just get on with it? And then the pushed back engagement, the introduction of April, which I like April. Saw that coming out of nowhere though. But I have some issues with just I get very irritated during those parts.
Yes,
I am not an Anna fan.
I absolutely agree. And Anna Nardini's like on my hit list. April's fine. She's a good character. I enjoyed her, but Anna just
April actually is one of my favorite parts of A Year in a Life. I just think she's so funny watching Luke trying to handle a teenager. But yeah, Anna Nardini, she just irritates me to death. Like she acted like Lorelai was just some passing person that shouldn't be introduced to her daughter. As if I don't know. I get very angry during that part. Like they're engaged. It's not like this is a one night stand that he's bringing around.
Exactly. It's
And
so dramatic for no reason.
Clearly Lorelei can raise a child. I mean, Rory got into Yale.
Exactly.
There's way worse role models you could have around.
So conversely, who was the worst match for Lorelei?
Well, I think we agree on this one too. Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. Digger is just. I understand where he was coming from, and I can only imagine his frustration of being kept a secret. But I just didn't like them together. I wish that he was more of an antagonist than he was.
Yeah, I enjoy those episodes, but the whole time I'm like, I don't really support this in the long run.
Yeah.
Like, he's fun. And it's fun to see Lorelai like date somebody from her parents' world who knew her whole life. So I don't know, it's fun to see that, but if she's gonna be with somebody like that, it's gonna be Chris.
Yes.
And Jason's just kind of like, I guess we're doing this now, this random man.
For me, Chris is definitely a very hard second. If I didn't love Luke as much as I love Luke, I would be happy to see her with Chris. I kind of liked their little marriage thing. I mean, I'm glad that it ended so she could be with Luke, but I liked getting a glimpse of that. And my heart really broke for Chris because I felt like he was trying so hard to get the people of Stars Hollow to like him.
He totally was. Sorry.
No, you're fine. And I haven't seen many other men put that much heart into Lorelai.
Yeah, he really was trying to make that work. And I don't know, like, I think a lot of people have been in that situation where like you want it to work so bad, the other person wants it to work so bad, and you're both putting in so much effort, but at the end of the day, a relationship shouldn't be that much effort.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the townspeople from the beginning, the people of Stars Hollow, were having none of him simply because he wasn't Luke. And
Exactly.
they had watched Lorelai raise Rory by herself with Chris rarely ever being around. So I can understand why they would be that way, but he's still trying so hard.
Exactly. And I think at that point too, the town is so over like Lorelai's relationships. Like, they know she needs to be with Luke, and they're just over her BS.
They're as done with it all as we were.
Yeah. While we're on the subject, though, can we please talk about Max Medina?
Okay, I like
Yes!
I love him.
I love him too. And it's not just because of where I am.
I mean, I think it makes perfect sense that she would be with someone like Max. I think he was perfect to her, and his relationship with Rory was really great. But if you introduce a love interest that early in the show, you know you have to get rid of them. So
yeah, and Max, I mean, he's not responsible. Him and Lorelai are both responsible. But for one of the first scenes where I actually feel anger toward Lorelai, and I'm like, man, maybe you aren't such a great mom, is when she put her maid to kiss him over Rory's like whole life there at Chilton. Like, I get so mad at that part because I'm like, you couldn't wait. Like, literally wait. You almost ruined her life. Do you not remember how mean kids are in high school? You knew that Rory was already having problems fitting in at Chilton, and you add. So I think that for me, Max Medina is just too tied to that moment for me, where I just feel they were both. Neither of them put Rory first the way Rory should have been at that time.
yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. So speaking of Stars Hollow, who is your favorite citizen of Stars Hollow? And I know who my favorite is.
I would say Suki and Jackson as a pair are my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I think Kirk is my favorite. Every scene with Kirk in it, I am just so happy about. He's just such an strange. I love all of his jobs. I don't know how he has time for all of them, but he just makes me so happy. And I love Sean Gunn as well. So Kirk is my
Yeah,
favorite townsperson,
definitely up there.
especially once he gets the pig.
That is so awesome. I haven't even seen this pig and I'm looking forward to it.
He
For
makes
me,
movies
it
about
has
it.
to be Miss Patty.
I love Miss Patty.
I feel like she's my spirit animal as an old lady.
Honestly,
Yeah,
like
can
that,
see
I want to
that.
be like that.
So, now that we've got Kirk on the table, what do you think was Kirk's best job?
Dog
Maybe
walker.
maybe not the job he was best at, but my favorite job is him making movies. They're always so funny and so weird. And I am just a movie person, anyways. So watching his movies are beautiful, especially the one where he just stands there. I don't know. Heather, have you gotten to him meeting his girlfriend yet?
No, no,
Lulu?
not yet.
Well, he meets Lulu and they make even more beautiful movies together. They make one about the pig dying. It's I always just love Kirk's movies. They're nice.
I
It's
love Kirk.
awesome.
One of my favorite episodes is when he starts out dog sitting Lulu's dog, and it turns into a whole dog walking business. And it's just one of those things where it keeps cutting to Kirk walking these dogs, and it's just a really good gag.
See, I think one of my favorite Kirk moments is when we find out that he gets naked and runs around in his sleep.
Oh my
So,
God.
and Luke is in charge of trying to make sure he doesn't do this. It's too funny. I love that episode. I think it's actually the first episode where people stay in the Dragonfly Inn, isn't it?
It is. It's the test run.
Yeah, I thought so.
That's why he tells Luke about it, because it's going to be the first night that him and Lulu actually spend the night together. And he's like, she can't see me be crazy like this.
Listen, she has already accepted his crazy. I don't think anything is going to push her away from that. But on the subject of, these hotels, I think my favorite episode is actually the Independence Inn where the people get snowed out. So all the
The
people of
bracelet
stars.
dinner.
I love that episode. It just makes me feel so good and so happy.
It is like the quintessential Gilmore Girls episode.
Yes.
Everything you could want is in that episode. And it's my favorite as well.
I am really sad though that the Dragonfly Inn's test run is marred by um, Rory and Dean's not so good decisions to cheat.
True story.
Oh,
Yeah, that's how they end that lovely episode with Rory abandoning Lorelei at the Dragonfly Inn to lose her virginity to Dean while he's
To
married.
be fair, she had an actual reason to go back to their house, but
I just that I'm so sad because I love that episode up until that part.
and it's the season finale, and if you were like me and you were watching it when it was airing, you have this great episode. Luke and Lorelei are going to get together. Lorelei's business is taking off, and then you have this cliffhanger where Luke and Dean have just had sex. Lorelei catches them essentially, and they're having a huge fight, and then you just have to deal with that for months.
See, I completely understand where Lorelai was coming from, and I think she said things that needed to be said. I think she just did it too soon. She did not give Rory a chance to sit back and process. Because I think if she had given Rory that opportunity, that Rory would have felt guilt all on her own. But I think that Lorelai jumping her case and not even giving her a second to process this big life change that's happened, like put it in Rory's head more. Like, see, my mom doesn't even understand. Dean is the only person that'll understand this. But I did love watching Rory get yelled at by Lindsay's mom. Not because I like Lindsay's mom. I think that was an appropriate thing to happen.
did you
I agree.
see this happening? Just to go off track a little bit, from what was it? The night before Dean gets married. And then he's having those, those drunken moments in Luke's apartment where he's like, "Oh, Rory."
I think
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hallie. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just gonna say, yeah, I think they definitely beat you over the head with the fact that Dean is still in love with Rory and he's getting married despite being in love with Rory. So I wasn't surprised when it happened, but still didn't love it.
See, I think for me, the moment that I realized that Dean wasn't done as a romantic person was when Rory is like watching him get married from afar and is like really upset about it. Like, because then that just confirmed that they are both feeling this way about each other. Because it wouldn't matter if Dean cried and felt that way about her if Rory was having none of him. So I think that was the moment for me where I was like, oh, that's not over. He might be married now, but we're going to see. But I think one of the big problems I have is that I never saw Rory as someone who would cheat. And yet here she is over and over and over again. This is only the first in her series of cheating ways, but I could not imagine that from the first few seasons that she would be that kind of person.
Yeah, Rory really becomes a very selfish character throughout the series. Which, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like as she gets more involved in the Emily and Richard of it all, but
it makes me really upset that, especially in a year in a life, that she's cheating with Logan because she's the one that turned down his proposal. If she wanted that, if she, she could have said, yeah, as long as it's a long proposal, I'm not ready for marriage yet. But she had the opportunity to be that person. And instead, she chose to cheat. But
So, no, go ahead.
I do really like the theory that, Gilmore Girls is a lot of parallelisms, and we naturally want to say, oh, well, Luke or Jess is Rory's Luke. But I saw a theory that it was more like Emily and Richard, that Logan would end up leaving his fiance the way Richard left his to marry Rory instead. So I'm like, who knows?
Who knows? So, which character do you think showed the most growth?
I would say either Paris or Emily. But I'll talk about Paris because I love Paris. I mean, we meet her and she's this hyper competitive, like jealous, and we realize later it comes from a place of insecurity. She lives in this world where appearances are everything, and she has no interest in the social strata, right? But her parents are very much invested in it, and it does affect her throughout high school. And then in the break between seasons 3 and 4, she gets a life coach and is like really trying to work on herself, and that kind of like fades away. But college Paris is so fun, and we really see her like grow into this self-assured person. Like she's pre-law and pre-med, and in a year in the life we find out that she's using both of those, and we just really see her become like someone who is so comfortable in herself, and also isn't afraid to actually make human connections. Because when we meet her, she has these two like really superficial friendships with Madeline and Louise. She doesn't really care about them. You don't really understand why they're friends. And then by the end of the show, she's in a long-term relationship and with someone who really loves her and who she really loves. And her friendship with Rory is it starts off so weird and it stays weird, but it's beautiful. And I really love Paris.
I think for me, honestly, I think it's Mrs. Kim because Lane's mom, because she goes from this very rigid, you're going to marry a Korean boy, you're going to like this private Christian college, you're playing classical music, you won't have anything, you won't have any secular kind of music unless it's classical. And then as the series goes on, we see Mrs. Kim talk her into staying with rock music when she wants to give up. We see Mrs. Kim help her have a wedding she'd rather have while still like respecting her grandmother. We see Mrs. Kim step out of those boundaries and even like come to, I think she really comes to like, I cannot believe that I just blanked on his name, Zach. That she
Zach.
really comes to like and be fond of Zach. And I just thought that was an amazing turnaround from this woman who was against everything that Lane ends up being.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mrs. Kim is great.
Yeah, she frustrates me at the beginning because luckily I'm not from a hyper religious family, but I am from a religious family and I know people that are from those kinds. And to see that kind of transformation was just really intriguing for me.
Speaking of which, and this is something I was curious about regarding Mrs. Kim. Is she vegetarian?
I believe she's vegan.
Okay. Yeah, because it's everything's soy, everything's dairy free. Just curious.
No, I don't. I believe a lot of Seventh-day Adventist Christians are vegetarian or vegan.
Okay.
See, I don't think I ever picked up on that. That all the food choices are plant based in Miss Kim's life.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I appreciate that.
So, which characters do you wish had more screen time?
So I wish there's one episode where we get this really good scene with Paris and Jess and Rory. It's at Rory's house. And they're just hanging out, having a good time. Rory, Jess and Paris are going back and forth about different authors, and you should read Jane Austen. I have read Jane Austen. And it's beautiful and so fun. And I just wish we got more scenes kind of exploring like what could be a great friendship. And I will forever feel cheated that we don't.
So the person that I wish I had more screen time is actually a really, I think, a strange pick, but I think that it's because I love the actor. Alex, the man that owns the coffee shop, and Lorelai dates him, and then he's just randomly not there anymore. I absolutely love Billy Burke. Every time I see him, I think of Charlie Swan, and it makes me so happy. I'm like, look at Papa Swan.
Oh.
So I wish that Billy Burke would have gotten at least a little bit more than what he got. And he was so good to Lorelai, like telling her he was taking her on a fishing trip and secretly taking her to a spa instead. Like I just thought that added some fun for Lorelai. It wasn't the upfrontness of everyone else.
Yeah, I think more screen time with him would have been fun.
And they love coffee. He owns a coffee company. Like, how is this not wonderful?
I wonder if he had like other obligations or something and couldn't be there because they really planted the seed for a good relationship for her.
They did.
And then he's just gone.
And then I don't know, maybe people were starting to like him too much and they were like, no, Luke.
We can't like Lorelai's love interests too much.
Yeah, because
unless they're Chris and Luke.
Because you always want Luke.
Yeah.
So speaking of Luke versus Taylor. Who really should be? I mean, choose a side.
I think Luke needs to calm down. He just is one of those people that just needs to be angry about things. And I can understand, like, Stars Hollow has a lot of weird rules, but It's not Taylor's fault. He's just following him.
As much as I love Luke, and I really actually don't like Taylor very much. I mean, he's entertaining, but I don't want to live around the man. Um, I think I agree with Hallie that like just put up one pumpkin out in your window, Luke. Just put
Like,
one turkey. Like, just stop being so rigid. Yes, it's irritating, but guess what? Taylor's gonna leave you alone if you just put out one pumpkin.
um, there's an episode where they're trying to get the dragonfly up and running, and Taylor keeps red taping Lorelei. And finally, she's like, "What do I have to do to get you to let me open my hotel?" And he's like, "I want an ice cream truck. I want to park it in front of the diner." And so Lorelai goes, and she's so mad. She's like, "Just let him have his ice cream truck." And Luke's like, "He never asked me."
Yeah, I feel like a lot of, yes, Luke is a very grump, very loner kind of guy, but I think a lot of the reason that he fights back is Taylor. I think he's doing it to be petty against Taylor, which is makes a hilarious dynamic. But in real life, I'd be like, Luke, put out one pumpkin, put out just the smallest thing to give him just a little bit of what he wants.
Just one pumpkin.
Yeah, like it's not too much. And the Luke's like, no, I won't do it. I'll never do it. I will die. You can burn it to the ground before I will. I mean, I guess that fits Luke.
No, he needs to calm down. I don't understand.
But I can also say that I would, as much as I love Huntington, I love there's always things to do. I love that Taylor's always bringing community events for everybody. Like, I love that idea. The carnivals, all of that is just some of my favorite episodes. So I do like that Taylor is really instrumental in bringing everyone together.
Yeah. So along those lines, choose a side. Lorelai versus her parents.
I mean, it's complicated, right? I mean, you can definitely, the show definitely wants you to side with Lorelai, but I don't know that that's always fair. I think Emily and Richard are very complicated people who live in a very complicated social world, and they were trying to make Lorelai successful in that world. She didn't want that, and they didn't necessarily understand that, but to them, I think it would have been unfathomable to let her like essentially ruin her life the way she was trying to as a teenager by this rebelling. And so when she finally runs away, they feel like they've failed. She feels like they don't care. And then we have this big rift that doesn't get resolved until the show starts, right? Mm-hmm. And then the show is basically them trying to repair this relationship. I feel like they both have fault and they both are understandable. But by the end of it, I think you can really tell, like Emily especially, like is really trying. Her and Lorelai just speak different languages, and it's nobody's fault.
Yeah, I think that Lorelai is too hard on her parents. I think she has a very, very narrow view of them. I think that she sees them as wanting to make her a copy of them, when I think that they just could not imagine being happy outside of their very privileged, wealthy life. So they're like, why would you be happy? Like, we're trying to give you the perfect life. Do you know how many people would kill to have your life if they just went to cotillion? So I definitely think there's a misunderstanding there. But I also understand Lorelai, maybe not so much as a teenager, because you're a teenager, your brain's not fully formed. But as an adult, they still kind of frustrate me with the way they treat her. Yeah, she's a hot mess, and that's okay. She's clearly a successful hot mess. And like, I don't know, I think that everybody is too rough on everyone. But the moment that I really see at least Richard. I absolutely love Richard. Um, I see that kind of starting to break is when Emily brings over the man to surprise Lorelai with. I think it's Rory and Dean's anniversary or something. And Emily uses this as the opportunity to bring him over. And Lorelai's trying to escape out the window, and Richard catches her. And she's like, please, he's so boring. And he's like, Emily, I don't know where she's at. Like, I loved that moment. And I like that was the first glimpse I felt like I really got of them starting to speak this language, of them working together and showing they're on the same team. Um, but I mean, I guess if I had to choose a side, I would still go with Lorelai, just because it is her life, and they do, even as an adult, they meddle in it a lot. So I think that would be the only reason that I pick Lorelai, is that they're just a little too meddlesome for me.
Do you think that they meddle more with Lorelai or with Rory?
I think they use Rory as a way to meddle with Lorelai.
I have the same opinion. Go ahead, Hallie.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like once Rory's like going to Chilton and things, they use that as a way to, especially Emily, to get into Lorelai's life. Like, oh, did you read the newsletter? Are you going to Parent Day? Let me buy you a DSL.
Yeah. I apologize. I agree. One of the scenes that stick out the most to me is actually a thing that Rory says. Um, when she's accidentally stayed out all night with Dean. They haven't done anything. They just fall asleep in Miss Patty's studio. But Rory looks at Lorelai and says, "You're not upset with me. You're upset that I messed up in front of Grandma." And for me, that says everything that I need to know about what is happening there. It's not, I mean, they're grandparents, they're going to be loving and spoiling them. But I mean, the whole, you have to come to Friday night dinner for us to pay for her school. I really don't feel like that had much to do with Rory.
Definitely.
And I definitely feel like Emily and Richard, like, almost, and I mean, they basically say this in the show. They see Rory as their kind of like do-over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we messed up with Lorelai, but if we can have a relationship with our granddaughter and do some of the things that we didn't get to do with Lorelai, then we can make up for it.
What irritates me is that they start making the same mistakes with Rory that they make with Lorelai. Like when they have the dinner where all of the eligible bachelors for Rory come, and like Rory has no idea, or the birthday party where they invited all of Chilton. Like they started trying to treat her the same way. So it was very shocking to me when they supported her dropping out of Yale and moving into their guest house. That was a shock.
Well, they were so against it. And then you get that moment with Rory and Richard where he sees his strong granddaughter, who has always been able to take on anything that you throw at her, which he says a lot, breaking down in front of him and asking for help. And Lorelai never asked for help from them.
And I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Hallie.
Oh, but Rory's there, completely vulnerable, completely begging for him to help her. And the way that they end up helping her is maybe not what they should have done, but I can definitely understand in that moment seeing Rory do something that Lorelai had never done, being able to be the person that can fix the situation, so to speak, and doing it.
I can say one of the moments that stick out for me with Richard and Emily and Rory, and it's one of the moments that I'm actually very disappointed in them in, is when Lorelai tells them how mean the Huntsbergers were to Rory. And they, instead of listening, instead of actually being worried about their daughter in the case that, or their granddaughter in the case this might be true, it was easier to be like, oh, our old friends would never act that way. And I'm like, really? Look at Christopher's parents. are you kidding me? That's how you all act. What do you mean? But then that does really pay off when Emily tells off Mrs. Huntsberger and reminds her that was, in Emily's words, a gold digger.
Such a good moment.
It is. It's so nice.
So you all have made comments regarding this, and I want to know more. Tell me more about Paris and Doyle.
So Doyle, we meet him, and he's the editor of the Yale Daily News. And Rory and Paris, obviously, are freshmen working at the Daily News. And I think they run into each other at like a speed dating event and start talking about current events. And the next thing you know, they're sleeping together, and then they kind of just continue to date and live together throughout Yale. And then when we catch up with them in a year in the life, they've had a few kids and they are recently divorced.
Oh.
I at the beginning thought Doyle was a very strange pick for Paris, because I pictured her as someone not just like Emily and Richard, but someone who is in that same vein of, I imagined that like Paris, if she wanted to get into journalism, would be someone who tried to marry Logan just to get it higher in her career. So it was very interesting to me that Paris, wanting to be a doctor, she would go for a journalist, even though, yes, she works in the journalism, all that. But it was odd for me, but I love the energy they have together. They're both such weirdos. Like, they're so strange, and they have that same intensity. It's just aimed at other things. I honestly see them getting back together if a year in the life were to continue. I don't think they'd stay apart.
Aww.
No one else is going to handle their weirdness as well as they handle each other's weirdness.
Yeah, I can't see Paris with anybody else, honestly.
So, what do you feel about Lane's storyline? We've just been going back and forth, back and forth.
I think Lane gets the short end of the stick. And it starts with Dave Rogowski, quote unquote, moving to California because the actor got a job at the OC. And then they kind of have to shoehorn in a different relationship for her that I don't necessarily love. I don't love her with Zach. He's so goofy and dumb, and Dave was just perfect, and he's just not even close to comparing. And then her storyline where she gets married really early and gets pregnant immediately, I don't know. It sucks. I hate Lane's storyline in the later seasons. She's such a cool character, and they don't let her do anything.
I have a very similar dissatisfaction. As much I do really, really love Zach. He just makes me laugh a lot. I don't know if I would see them going together outside of Hollywood magic, but I do love Zach as a character. He makes me laugh all the time. I do think he's really supportive of her, but I agree. I think that, Lane should have had the chance to at least go to college for a little while, or to at least be married for a little while if they were going to still have her get married so young. But I also think it's fitting that she did get pregnant the first time they did it, because Miss Kim also says that happened to her, because she makes the comment, "I'm so glad I only had to have sex once." So I thought that was once again, we're returning to those parallelisms between mom and daughter. So I thought that was fitting, but yeah, I absolutely thought that it was heartbreaking that Lane didn't really get to grow up, and what's she gonna do? Work at the diner as a waitress the rest of her life? There in Stars Hollow? I mean, in Stars Hollow, Gilmore Girls universe, she's gonna make plenty of money and they're gonna be fine. But she could have been in a record rock band playing concerts all over the world. And I felt like they just gave her they just wrote her off, basically. They were like, it's easier to make her a mom and keep her in Stars Hollow.
Oh.
Exactly.
When I think it would have been cool had Rory gotten a job to be like a journalist following Lane's band around. That'd have been so much fun to watch. live in different cities. Like I think that they missed a big opportunity with Lane's character. She was no longer useful to Rory in college. So they were like, well, we got to figure out something.
So, what books or movies have you picked up because of the Gilmore Girls?
I've definitely listened to a lot of music because of Gilmore Girls and Lane specifically. Like I think when they go on spring break, the band that's playing in the club is the Shins, and they're very cool. Hang on, I wrote these down. Lane's obsessed with Nico, and Rory's into PJ Harvey, and so like those were bands that not bands. That's music that I only listened to because of Gilmore Girls, and I think it really shaped my whole musical experience. But I also definitely read Jane Austen and Kurt Vonnegut, some others really early because Rory talked about them.
Did you pick up any of Jess's books?
I didn't personally.
So I think I haven't from Gilmore Girls. I think that my tastes are more in line, however, with Dean's. Like he's talking about like sci-fi and stuff like that. I got my master's degree by writing about zombies. So I think that me and Dean would have a much more similar um, interest in pop culture than me and Rory would, even though I do like Jane Austen. I would be more than happy um, to read books with Rory and to talk about them. They actually have a Rory Gilmore book club, which is interesting. But no, I haven't picked up anything. I think, like Hallie, I would be more likely to pick up music than books. It's quicker to listen to a song than get halfway through a book I can't finish.
So obviously the showrunner is Amy Sherman Palladino, but her husband Daniel Palladino writes some of the episodes as well, and you can always tell when it's a Daniel Palladino episode because he's a big music person. And so any episode where you have Lane like listing a ton of bands, that's a Daniel Palladino episode. And when I was a kid, I would, because the episodes would play on ABC Family like when I got home from school, and so I would have like a list. I would have a notebook like, what are they talking about? What do I need to go look up later? And if you had the DVDs, the earlier seasons came with like a booklet, and it was all the pop culture references that they would make in that season. And so I would go through that booklet and like go listen to the songs, or if it was a TV show or a movie that I could like rent at the video store, I would do that. But mostly it was music, and I was such a little nerd about it.
I will also put a star here. I actually didn't watch Gilmore Girls until quarantine. So that might also have something to do with it. That I was 25, 26 years old watching it rather than growing up with it. So I don't know how much that plays in me not taking so much interest in what they're reading.
Okay.
I was definitely a kid growing up with Gilmore Girls.
So, any show recommendations similar to Gilmore Girls?
I think Schitt's Creek or Letterkenny both definitely have that like small town, just a ensemble cast of characters that are wacky and you grow to love. Would definitely be my recommendations.
Actually, another ABC show, ABC Family. Technically, it's on Hulu. Is Greek, and
yes,
I love Greek. It actually is what got me to apply for grad school again. And I just like Hallie said, there's just a lot of wacky characters. It takes place on this college campus, so it still has like that small feel. And I was never in sorority life, and I still love Greek. It's very reminiscent without the intellectualism. I would say like they don't really talk about books. It's very social gatherings and very socially in a different way than Gilmore Girls is, but still I think very similar in the same idea.
I will say Letterkenny has a bunch of pop culture references, but they do it in a different way than Gilmore Girls does, and it's one of those shows that it takes a couple episodes to figure out like what is happening. But I just rewatched 6 seasons of it over the course of like 4 days because I've just been at my house like packing everything I own and letting it play in the background, and it is so funny.
You know, there's a moment in Letterkenny. I mean, just the whole, I mean, I haven't watched the entire thing, but I've seen Red Panda. And I know this sounds bizarre, but they seem to flow. Letterkenny? Yeah, Letterkenny, right?
Yeah, because they talk so fast.
Yeah. But anyway, so any closing thoughts on Gilmore Girls? Because thank you so much. This has been a great conversation.
I guess I would just say Gilmore Girls is one of those shows that I will always come back to. It's like a comfort blanket of a show. It came out on Netflix for the first time when I was starting college, and I just remember my first semester of college was really rough, and I would come back to my dorm and just watch Gilmore Girls, and it made it a little bit better. And anytime I'm going through like a rough season in my life, Gilmore Girls is there, and I'll never get tired of it.
Oh,
I will say, being raised by a single mom, Gilmore Girls hit me in a special kind of way. Or once I got halfway through the first season, I was like calling my mom and being like, "Mom, I know how you feel about like teen shows, but you have to watch Gilmore Girls. Like it would be us if we were in a similar situation." And like I really felt like Hallie said, it's very comforting for me. Fall and winter are like my favorite. I love how cozy they feel. And I think that's the best word I can use to describe the show is it's just a cozy show that just makes you feel like things are gonna be okay. And I agree with Hallie, when the world gets too much for me, Gilmore Girls is always nice to put on.
aw. Well, thank you both very much for being guests on our HerdCon podcast. And thank you so much for forcing me to um get into this life. Um I can't even imagine. No, I I don't even know why I didn't see it the first time.
In one of my Gilmore Girls fan groups, someone said, "Have you ever noticed when Gilmore Girls fans talk to you, they say, 'Are you watching?' instead of 'Have you watched?' Because Gilmore Girls isn't something that you just watch once. It becomes something that you watch over and over and over again, and it never gets boring."
That is so true. Well, any final thoughts? Or were those your final thoughts? Thank you so much. And thank you so much for those of you who have joined us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, me too. Anytime.
Yeah,
Okay.
seriously, I can talk about all kinds of nerdy stuff. So.
Well, send them on to us. Well, thank you very much. And with that, we are out. Okay.